Good afternoon, everybody. For everyone coming in, there's some spaces down here as well. I'd like to welcome you to this afternoon's session on 21st century learning. The format for today's session is we're going to hear from Helena King, then Nigel Paine, and then we're actually going to have a panel session at the end where we're going to be discussing some questions. So if you have any questions about the slides in particular and the information in them, there will be gaps at the end of each of the presentations for you to be able to ask questions directly about those presentations, and then there'll be an opportunity at the end to talk more widely about challenges in the 21st century learning, and you'll be able to put direct questions to that specific subject at the end. So there's lots of opportunity to interact. So I'm going to start off by introducing Helena King. I'm going to read it out so I get it right. There's nothing worse than cocking up somebody's abilities. So Helena has had nearly 20 years of experience leading interdisciplinary teams globally to develop blended e-learning courses within the educational context. Her work is focused on ensuring all products are learner-centered and using learning technologies to enhance and reinforce learning. Before her work with TESS, she worked for a number of companies to create innovative blended learning solutions for both students and teachers, including Cambridge University Language Centre, Cambridge University Press, Pearson Education, Macmillan Education, and the BBC. And that's why I had to read it out, so I didn't mess it up. So with no further ado, I'd like to invite Helena to the stage for her presentation. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, it's working. Hi, thanks for coming. I recognise some faces in the audience. Hi. I work for TESS, and TESS is the former TESS Times Education Supplement that some of you may have heard of, now known as TESS. And I work for, so it still does a lot, it still does the education magazine, and it still does the jobs pages and all of that. But it believes in the power of great teaching. I'm not going to read the mission statement out to you. And it believes in the power of great teaching and the power of great technology to support that teaching. And what I'm going to talk about today are a couple of the programs that we produce for our teacher training element. So TESS has lots of different departments within the organisation around hiring candidates, around giving the resource website that some of you may have heard of, which is a huge network for teachers to share their teaching resources with each other and communicate and support each other, as well as TESS Institute that I work for, which is the teacher training arm of TESS, and it was established in 2015. In that time, so just under 5 years really, we have managed to support 15,000 teachers in their teacher training needs. And during that time, we've also partnered with 1,700 schools, mainly in the UK. We are starting to widen that reach. And we have qualified 2,500 teachers, just over actually, in the last 5 years that we've been around. One of the programs I want to talk about is our Subject Knowledge Enhancement program, which is, I've moved on already. So we do three different types of programs. We do one which is around subject knowledge enhancement. It's for teaching, either people who want to become teachers or those who are already teachers and need to change the subject they're teaching or upskill in that subject. We do in-class support, so there's a lot of supporting teachers in the classroom or people going to become teachers in the classroom to their qualified teacher status or to get their postgraduate certificate in education. And we also do continuous professional development for teachers and school staff. So the one I'm going to talk about first is our subject knowledge course, which is 100% online. It was created 5 years ago. Lots of these courses already existed with universities, but very much classroom-based, very much just face-to-face classroom courses. And it was developed because there's a teacher shortage, there still is. But this was developed to reach that need, to deal with that need and address that teacher shortage. We needed to be wide-reaching, hence the online, 100% online. We needed to be flexible. We needed to prepare people for their careers in teaching, and we needed to do this because, because of the teacher shortage. Now, one of the key things I put up there, the teachers receive bursaries, and this is really important because it means that the people that take these courses can either do less of their work, so they have some bursary, or they can pay for childcare, so they have the time to do the training. Because it's 25 hours a week. It's a very, very intensive course. So that's a key element of it, which I will touch on again in a little while. It's personalised and is reflective. So what I mean by that is at the beginning of the course, you have a programme of study. You have very key areas that you're going to study, but you have a subject knowledge audit to make sure that you identify where your weaknesses are and where your strengths are. And you work with a tutor to review those weaknesses so that you then tailor that course to your needs. So it's not a very strict linear course. We have a clear programme, that you then review and tailor to your needs. The whole course is reflective, so every week the students have to submit a learning diary to show where they've improved, where they need to improve, and they discuss that with their tutor. So they have an online tutor, so it's still 100% online, but they have an online tutor who they discuss things with every week on their progress, on where they need to improve, on where they're going. And they also have a very strong online community. So it's not just the tutor. We have your classic forums, but it's not just, we have past trainees that also are part of those forums that offer advice and their experiences. And it's a really, really big virtual environment, which we've created a very strong environment over the last 5 years. We have very focused discussions on a regular basis that bring the learning to life. And it's all about creating an environment where people feel valued, because it is their careers, it is their future careers we're preparing them for, so that they feel valued, so that they feel like it is an important part of their learning. And we know that it works, and we know that people like it, because the feedback we get is amazing, and people really feel prepared for their teaching environment when they get into it. So this is a course they do before they go on to do a teacher training course. This is a course they do in order to improve and upskill their subject knowledge. And the reason I am confident that it works is because there's a lot of time spent with the planning of it. So we plan the content very, very meticulously to make sure that it is in line with what the curriculum needs, in line with what those people are going to need in the classroom. We plan the order of the content from what's most important in the curriculum to what's less taught. We plan the length of the courses can be from 8 to 28 weeks, so that will depend on the learner's needs. We also manage it really carefully, so we have the online forum, which is managed by tutors, managed by subject experts. We have the programme that's managed by programme directors, a whole academic suite behind it. And we also support our trainees with the tutor support. We also have the platform support. So it's all very well supported, and all of that is very contextual. So what they learn is what they need to learn in order to succeed. So it's all very meaningful, and we get a lot of good feedback. So in this instance, the reason I touched on it is because we talk about online learning quite a lot, and people often almost make that synonymous with self-study, and they sort of say things like, you can't teach a language online, you can't teach sciences online, and we do that. We do teach languages online, we do teach sciences online. So whilst you can't always teach everything, and there are some things that you do need to take into a classroom, there's a lot you can prepare for. There's a lot you can do within the communities, using interactions, using certain sorry, I've got a dry throat. Using certain interactions that you can do to prepare people online to then feel confident in the classroom, to then feel confident to put what they've learned into practice. So that's one of the programmes. The other programme is more of a blended approach, and it is a blended learning approach. What it is that it's in-school practice with online learning. So before people want to become a teacher, they apply for this particular programme. They have to apply to a school, and we partner with 117 schools who make up part of 7 school groups to deliver this programme. And the trainees will apply for their in-school placement, and then they'll be put on this programme. They will be assigned an in-school mentor. So this is someone who's only been teaching for 2, maybe 3 years, so still relatively new to it. They will receive some mentor training, but they are there for that trainee in school to help them with the school culture, the school processes, you know, that kind of, you come out of a classroom and it's gone awfully, it's that person you can turn to and say, that just didn't work for me, I don't know what to do. But alongside that, they have their online tutor. The online tutor is the person with much more experience and expertise around the subject, who's there to support them, who's there to review their work. They have weekly tasks that they have to submit to their tutor to talk about what they've done that week, to show them what they're going to plan for the following week. And we also have the online section, which has weekly tasks as well. And we expect them to do 7 hours of online learning during this course, as well as all the in-school practice. And in order for them to do those 7 hours of learning, we give them dedicated time for learning online. And what that is that we get the 117 schools to agree to give every single one of those trainees, and currently it's around 200 a year that we're training, to give them 1 day a week off class schedule, off class timetable. And we also encourage them to give them the same day, so they all have Fridays to study online. What this means is that it places immense weighting on the online section. It's not something they have to fit in and around their teaching, in and around their in-school practice. It's something that we give them dedicated time for. Because they know it's a Friday, they know that other people doing it are going to be online at the same time. And this means that they have that support again. We have that online community. A lot of these people, as I said, 117 schools, 200 trainees. There are some trainees that will be on their own in a school doing this programme. So by creating this online community, this collaborative element to it, they are not on their own. And they know that on a Friday, someone else doing the same course as them, so for example, design and technology, we had 2 trainees out of the 200 doing design and technology in 2 different schools. But they know on a Friday that they can communicate about the tasks that week. They're doing the same tasks. They've got a buddy somewhere else doing the same thing, probably experiencing the same things. So that has given it a lot of weight. When we talk to the trainees, they really appreciate that day a week to focus on that online learning. It doesn't mean they can't access the learning at any other time. Of course they can. It's there, it's available. They can go back to it when they want. They can look forwards if they are interested in what's coming up. And everything that we plan is planned with the school year in mind. So we will start the programme of study looking at things that they'll need from the beginning, like lesson preparation, because that's one of the first things they need. So that's something they do in week 1. But we don't bombard them with everything straight away and drip it throughout the year. So around January time, they get a little bit about marking and feedback, because they won't have needed to do it up until then. So all of the learning is contextualised. It's in time with when they're going to need it during their studies. So it's all really, again, well planned. So we think very carefully about the context of that learning, about what they're going to need, when they're going to need it, and make sure that we give it to them as they need it. Again, they do a subject knowledge audit at the beginning of the year, and we identify if there's areas of weaknesses that maybe we should spend more time on, and they will tailor that again to their learning with their tutor, so they will discuss that. Again, it's all well managed. So there's a lot that goes behind the scenes to make sure that every single one of those trainees feels like they've got a personalised learning journey that's tailored to their needs. They know who to turn to when they have problems. They know what to do. They know where to go. We give them induction webinars at the beginning to show them around the LMS. We show them around their calendars, explain the whole programme to them. And so that they feel well supported again. And that's what's really helps to make this successful, is that they feel well supported. They know that there are their tutors online, their mentors in school, their peers online. They also know that we've got a platform support team that they can contact. And I manage the platform support team, and they get amazingly good feedback from our trainees because they respond so quickly. And even if they haven't got the answer, they respond to say, I'm looking into it, I'll get back to you. So the trainees feel well supported. And over the last 5 years, we've managed to qualify just over 500 teachers just through this particular programme. So that's the two programmes I wanted to touch on. And the reason I've talked about both of those is I really wanted to talk about what's next. Oh, so this is just, I forgot about this slide. This is just some feedback we got from an external moderator, just to show what does work and why it does work. And it basically, we are preparing our teachers of tomorrow for that in-classroom practice. Some of you may know that 44% of newly qualified teachers quit within the first year of teaching because it is so hard and because they haven't necessarily had that in-school practice. 98% of our trainees continue, and 98% of them get good to outstanding because they have so much support in that learning. So that whole ecosystem of learning and support is there throughout the whole of their training, which gives them that first-hand knowledge of what it's like in the classroom. So what is next? What's next is that we want to expand. We want to go international. We want to take the learning that we've got from these two programs and really think about how can we reach a wider audience and provide an international postgraduate certificate in education. So it's been working well in the UK, so how can we expand? We know that the in-school mentor and the online tutor thing setup works. So that's something that we've already started to explore a little bit. So we do not accept candidates on this programme if they do not have in their schools a mentor with qualified teacher status. So that's one of the things. We know that meaningful content aligned to context and learners' needs works. We know that dedicated study time is critical to make the online part of it really, really meaningful. What we're struggling with, and what I'd like to open to the audience a little bit, is how do we internationalise our content? Because it is very UK-centric, it's very UK curriculum. I've got some ideas we've been exploring, but it'd be great to hear what you've got to say. And how do we do lesson observations? I didn't talk about that before, but our online tutors go into schools 3 times a year for our UK courses to observe their trainees in situ. We tried that last year with the IPGCE with our 10 trainees, and it was extremely costly and time consuming. So we're looking at how do we make this a scalable product? How do we start doing that? So over to you.
Do we have any questions in the room directly relating to Helena's presentation? Oh, hold on, I'm going to run with my mic like Janica.
Yeah, I'm curious about this. You said about support part. Can you a little bit go into details? How was it organized and how personalized was it?
How personalised is the support?
Yes.
The support is very personalised because every single trainee has their own tutor and their own mentor. So from that perspective, they have that personalised support from those two individuals. In terms of the tutor time, the tutors only give about half hour a week. So it is very personalised, but it's also time boxed because otherwise it would get unscalable. So they have the mentors are volunteers, so the mentors don't get paid for their time. They are there to support the student in the school, but the tutors give a half hour a week where they review reflections, give solid feedback, and like I said, 3 times over the year go into school. So it might be that some weeks they don't give anything, and other weeks they spend an hour. They could be on the phone, they could be on WhatsApp, they could be through the forums, but so it is very personalised. Yeah, with the tutors, they all get training and how we want them to feedback. That's right. It's exactly the same approach for everybody. So every single tutor gets training in what we expect from them. Every tutor also gets quality assured. So we regularly check that the quality of that feedback is good enough, that the quality is going to help the trainees develop. That it's not just, good job, but that they actually give them, some constructive feedback. And then the mentors also get trained. So a lot of it is quite personal. So we're judging people's reflective. It's about what they do in the classroom. That's how we judge the quality. It's when they're in that classroom and they're teaching, how are they improving over the course of the year? Those lesson observations are critical to whether they're really learning how to teach. That's the only way we can really judge it, is by what they're doing in the classroom, the response from the students. The students also get asked for feedback on the quality of the teaching, and that's where we get it. It's from the students themselves.
Okay. Oh, one more. Got time for one more question.
Is your curriculum, does your curriculum include educational technology used in classroom?
It does. So one of the key assignments that the trainees do is how can they use technology to enhance learning in the classroom. And so we look at a lot of different elements that are out there and how they can best use it. There is a limit on that because a lot of schools don't have enough technology, but increasingly iPads and things are coming in, and they do some fun things, especially in PE, which you would never have anticipated. But yeah, so there is a whole element around that.
Perfect. Thank you, Helena. Okay, so next up we have Nigel. I'm going to get the bio right as well. With over 25 years of experience in corporate learning, Nigel is a regular speaker, writer and broadcaster on topics of development, technology and leadership. Between 2002 and 2006, he headed up the BBC's learning and development operation. Following this, he started up his own company, nigelpaine.com Limited, that is focused on building great workplaces. He teaches at a doctoral program at an Ivy League university, has written 3 recent books. Do you see why I'm now reading this out? Presents a monthly TV program, Learning Now TV, and shares a weekly podcast with Martin Cousins called From the Scratch. So if I'd like to have a warm welcome for Nigel onto the stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's called NigelPaine.com Limited because limited means don't blame me. It's your fault. Right. I have very fond memories of the TES. I used to be an occasional columnist for the TES in Scotland. It looks wistfully into the deep, distant past, and I'm glad it's still flourishing in this age. And Helena's got a finger on the button. You create a great learning environment, you coach, you mentor, and you give people space to learn. I think there's some really generic, good practice, good ideas in that presentation. Thank you very much, Helena. So, I tell you what I'm going to do. I've got a very simple presentation. It's all I can cope with. The presentation is 4 ideas, 4 trends, 4 things I think are really important, illustrated by 2 case studies and 2 final thoughts. I get off the stage. Okay? So that's what it's going to be, and that is going to be, I'm going to time myself so I'll get a buzz when I'll have to get off the stage. Okay, the first trend, which is fundamental, I think, to learning, is we need a whole bunch of people to start listening and stop just taking solutions off the shelf or having attitudes that are predefined before they walk in the room. So it's about listening. And what that will be is that's very pixelated, and I apologize, but we've got to close that gap between what the user wants and what we think they need. Because always the user is going to win. Guaranteed just in this. And to prove it, this is my own picture. That is my daughter. And as we came up to this junction, I could read in her mind, she was saying, he's going to go across the shortcut, I'm not. So I did indeed go up the shortcut. She walked round the path, and at the end she said, nice weight, Dad? And I said, yep, great, thanks very much. She knows how to wind me up, and she knows the way I operate. I will always go for the user experience. I will not do what I'm told to do. And the vast majority of learners in organizations are simply trying to survive. They're trying to get through the day. And in many instances, people in learning are the enemy. They're the bloody nuisance who take them away and try and take them down weird and wonderful ways that they think are appropriate, having never asked whether it's the right thing to do. So we must close that gap between user experience and design. And I mean not just design of a page, I mean the overall design of the entire learning environment. Second shift, this is taken from Charles Jennings. I borrow stuff from everybody. The first one was from Nick Shelton-Jones. So, Charles Jennings. I had a conversation with Charles and he produced this slide, which is really excellent. And he's also in Australia at the moment, so he can't stand up and say, no, you didn't. He can't disagree with me. So, what Charles, after the conversation, he said, there's two shifts going on, two fundamental shifts going on, I think. And this is how I would tabulate it. And they're great. I think it's a really good slide. I added that arrow at the top because there's a movement from left to right. And it's at two levels. On the one hand, it's about the nature of the learning operation. Get away from being order takers. And if you are an order taker, if people slap stuff on the table and say, give me 3 of those, you are at least 50% responsible. It is not difficult to challenge that in a non-offensive and non-aggressive way. You must challenge that, because if you're an order taker, you will never be doing what you're supposed to be doing, which is focusing on performance. And even if you do focus 100% on performance, that's not enough. You have got to be a value creator. And what a value creator does, rather than just enable learning, a value creator is aligned with the business and is doing what the organization needs to be successful, to thrive, and to work optimally. You are a massive contribution to that success. But if you still hang around taking orders and thinking that organizing some great learning is the end of your job, you're missing a huge, huge trick, and you're missing the thrust of learning going forward in this century. So I think that's incredibly important, that slide. Next point, it's about agility. Whenever I do a presentation, I always include a picture of myself, and I just kind of snuck that in quickly and hope you'd appreciate it. So, agility. I borrowed a slide from Pepe. It's really more than just this, just the need to create a group of people in the workforce who believe they can learn. And if you can do that, that is a massive achievement. Most people do not believe they can learn, are terrified of being exposed for being failed learners, and therefore do not take risks, cover their backside, blind copy emails into everyone they can think of, refuse to take responsibility, shift blame wherever they can shift blame, as long as it's not onto them. That is the nature of modern working culture, and the workforce that believe that has been created by that culture. So one way is to create people who embrace challenge, persist, take action, and help others. But my belief is that if we focus too much on individuals, then we're missing the point. We need agile organizations. We need to use the skill of the individual to make the whole organization better, not just ramp up the skills of individuals who contain their learning, cover and hide their skills in order to prepare themselves for the next job. And the result is they leave, the organization learns absolutely 100% of nothing. The learning organization is one where the skills of everyone in the place get better and the organization gets better, which encourages people to get better, which makes the organization better, which means it can be agile in a desperately disruptive, crazy world where we really don't know what is going to happen next in a very serious way. And anyone who's in a UK business now is thinking, what the hell's going to happen on the 1st of January 2021? And that sounds like, well, that's a long way away. It's not, it's just round the corner. So how do you prepare for that? How do you prepare for people who've built relationships that are going to be smashed up, who are going to build new relationships that they haven't even thought about now, who will be able to be learning Japanese rather than French, or whatever it might be? It's going to be tough. And organizations are going to have to weather that storm. And the ones who will weather it best are not the ones with the most forms or the most procedures. They'll be the ones with the most agile workforce who can adapt and say, hey, we could do this way. I think that will work. Try it out, make a mistake, try it again, and go forward. So that issue of agility is increasingly vital in this world. But don't see it as just about individuals. See it as about organizations. And the next one is just about seeing the big picture. I'm frustrated, I think is the word. We're working with learning learning leaders and learning teams who just see that it's all about learning. We've just got to be better at what we do. Well, the only way you're going to be profoundly better at what you do is not just think it's about learning, and think it's about how you can transform an organization. And that's going to be the essence of the two case studies. It's about increasingly the future of organizations is around the learning ability of the people and the translation of that to the organization. So I have my little metaphor of the learning is a gyroscope in the cockpit of the organization. That just like a plane, the gyroscope in the cockpit tells the pilot where the horizon is and where the nose is in relation to the horizon. Basic, but pretty fundamental. If you're flying in thick fog or cloud and there's a mountain coming along, it will tell you whether you're going too high, too low, or you're just at the right altitude. Organizations fly upside down in fog. They go straight into mountains without realizing it. They need that gyroscope just like a pilot does. And you can think a better way, give it to me, because I'd be desperately keen to hear from you. But I think learning is the only way we can build that energy, that circulation of information from outside into the organization, around the organization. That creates the energy that spins the gyroscope and keeps the organization on track. It's absolutely fundamental. And there we are. This is Pepe. He made me buy this book. It was really expensive. And I said, no, I'll just read a summary. Buy the book. I bought it. So this is what Keegan's new book says. Imagine you design a culture that immersively sweeps everyone into an ongoing developmental journey in the course of every working day. That is what your job is not to focus on, let's get this technology working, let's make sure everyone does 3.5% more than they did last year in learning, let's get a budget that is 4% more in order to deliver 6% more of X, Y, or Z. That is your task. Design a culture that sweeps everybody into a continuing development journey that they find exciting, they find easy, and eventually it is so natural to them, they don't need you anymore to do very much apart from the fundamentals. Job done. Then you can work on increasing and enhancing that culture. So it is, I think, about building a culture of learning in organizations. And I disagree with my good friend David Kelly, who said, it's rubbish talking about learning cultures. Every organization has a learning culture. It's different in different organizations. I dispute that, Dave. I think that some organizations have a training culture, which is about focused on competence and just getting the job done. Some organizations don't give a bugger. They basically say, you're on there, do it or don't do it, and if you don't do it, we'll fire you. There's no culture at all, anything that relates to development. So a learning culture, we've lost the word. If a learning culture means it's anything that anyone does in any organization at any time, let's find a new term, because it's now redundant and dead. I think it's very important. And if you read Keegan's book, An Everyone Culture, he kind of nails it for me. So, 2 case studies. There's lots of examples, but I'm going to focus on 2. This is WD-40, an amazing company run by Gary Ridge. Gary has turned the company, since he took over, from a $220 million market cap organization, i.e. very small, very boring, one product in a can, to a $1.6 billion operation, manufacturing in 40 countries, selling in 160. It's extraordinary what he's done, and he's done it through this. He hasn't done it through, let's set big targets. He does set big targets, but he also sets values. And what Gary says, and I think he's right, is that the learning and teaching that he's indicated there, the learning and teaching only works when these other things are in place. In particular, a values-driven organization where you have a sense of belonging that focuses on how they could be tomorrow, not just how they survive today, that has specialist skills and generalist skills where everyone sees themselves as a real tribe on a journey, working together, and where they celebrate success. So he says that just focusing on one of those dots won't help you. It's about building a culture, and I think he's right, and I use this term as well. You build the culture right, learning bubbles up. You don't have to spend much time on getting people motivated and interested. They're already motivated and interested because the culture is helping them there. And if you think, well, you know, Gary's talk his back legs off a donkey, which he can, this is the employer engagement statistics that Gary does every 2 years in WD-40 Company. And it's an independent organization. He doesn't do it himself, send out 3 emails and say, hey, they love us. It's all true. So look, this is incredible. I love to tell people who work for WD-40 that I work for WD-40 Company. 99%. I respect my coach. Coaches are what he calls managers. So they don't have managers. They only have coaches. And if something goes wrong with an employee, they haul in the coach and say, what did you do wrong? So-and-so's struggling. So-and-so's really, really unhappy. Coach, fix it. And 97% clear on their company's goals. I feel my opinions and values are a good fit with WD-40 Company. 98%. I know what results are expected of me. 97%. If you can match that, please tell me. And if you go to Glassdoor, where all the disillusioned people fill the pages with bile about how awful their organizations are, he gets a 99% approval rating. And that's from people who've been left, been fired, or whatever. So it's a very interesting company, based around a philosophy of it's okay to fail, and if we don't fail, we'll never learn. And let's be ambitious. Let's try things that we know are probably not going to work in order that we can find things that actually do. And he sets very demanding targets, but he gets people together in teams. How can we do this? There must be a way of doing this. And people love the place. Go talk to anyone who works in it. They love the place. And the people who leave often leave, not because they don't love the place, but because it's a small company and they can't grow beyond where they are. So they move. And there's only one CEO. And so far, that is Gary. Next one, Microsoft. Chris Pirrie, I had a lot more on Microsoft. I'm not going to do that because Chris Pirrie was the CLO there. I feel slightly embarrassed standing after Chris Pirrie and saying, I'll tell you all about Microsoft when he told us all about it an hour ago. But essentially, Satya Nadella has done something unbelievable in Microsoft. He has turned that whole company from being I think I can say this because I've been there, I've been in Redmond, a nasty culture where it was all about stabbing people in the back, aggressively going after your customers and destroying the opposition and fighting internally for supremacy amongst the warring tribes. So, you know, if you worked in Word, you really hated anyone in PowerPoint team, and if you worked in Office PC, you would never share anything with the Mac team because they're not going to give them any features that they could launch first. Now he's created this environment where they're adding value. He's adding people together. They're doing cross-platform solutions. So look at what 365 has been transformed into, a workflow environment, not separate applications. It's amazing what he's done. And he said, I'm with you. The key is to keep learning and improving and work as one Microsoft. And if you want proof, this is extraordinary. That's where he took over, where that line is. So he took over when Microsoft's share price, stock price, was at an all-time high, pretty much. And it had a bump when he took over, and then it plummeted. Who is this guy? We never heard of him. Plummeted a bit. Now look at it. It's out of all proportion to what anybody could have predicted. And it's done on the basis of we're not going to be the know-it-alls, we're going to be the learn-it-alls. Intense focus on customers, delivering delight, being curious, exploration, all of the things that are not learning, but embed learning at the core of the culture. I think that's a really interesting slide. And 2 more. This is my 2 observations. I borrowed this from Harold Jarkey, and I like Harold a lot. And what he talks about is different networks, but I think it's right that we should be in more than one network. So the connectivity, you all need a network that will help you keep in touch. You are a working network in this room. How many of you will make 4 connections and stick with them after you leave on Thursday? Build your network, because inside many organizations, no one cares about learning. Find a few people who do, who know what's going on. If you find something interesting out there, ask to come and see it. Could I spend half an hour with you? Some people are saying no. A huge number will be so thrilled that someone's taken an interest and respects what they're doing, that they'll welcome you with open arms. So you need that sort of network, but you also need the kind of sharing of expertise. He calls it communities of practice. I don't care what you call it, but where the people who know across the whole organization can come together and work out what needs to be done. So you don't focus on saying some technical issue, everybody tell us about this. You focus on the 10 people who actually know what they're talking about and make sure that what they come to the conclusion is shared and embraced and accepted. Google have done that brilliantly over the last 5 years. And they did it by simply changing a line in the HR form that you keep up to date as an employee. What skills do you have? One line. Second line, would you mentor on these skills or take a phone call on these skills? Free text. And that built these amazing networks of expertise across the whole world. And it's still delivering value for Google today. And then finally, down here, you need stuff that gets the organization doing things efficiently in a structured way and an informal way to take action. So this is sort of day-to-day action. This is building for the future, and this is your connection, which makes you feel like you're valuable and you know what the hell's going on. And that when somebody says to you, tell us about this, you don't go, oh, I never heard of that. You know. So you've got to know, your organization has got to know, and it's got to know in terms of the future, and it's got to know in terms of the present. So it's got to be better in the present and better, or potentially better, in the future. And this is my simple model of a learning culture. My model of a learning culture has got not a lot to do with learning in the first instance. For example, if you take this one up here, if you take trust, if you have a low trust organization, forget ever getting learning shared around. Who would share anything with anyone if you can't trust what they will do, what they will say, or that they'll stab you in the back the week after? Who would admit a mistake if that's going to be held against you by someone else or by your manager or whatever it will be? Trust is critical, but leadership is has to embody these: trust, empowerment, engagement. If leadership isn't trustworthy, who else is going to be trustworthy? So you've got to work on these before you work on these, before you begin to build the learning culture. And if you take those 4 words, collaboration, sharing, purpose, autonomy, imagine that's tipped upside down and they're actually 3-dimensional. And what everyone has to do is say, so what would sharing look like in my place? Give some practical examples. How could we make sharing more valuable? What does autonomy look like? Doesn't mean anyone can do anything at any time. Where do we draw the boundaries? How do we draw the boundaries? How do we expand the boundaries as people become more competent? What is our purpose? Does everybody know the purpose? Do we all share the same purpose? And then how do we collaborate? How can we make collaboration a reality in our organizations? Once you've got that moving, you have the chance for that learning culture to bubble up inside the organization. And that's the book, that's the final slide. I thought, what the hell? I worked long and hard trying to define a learning culture, and to be told everyone has one, I go, if you're interested, read the book. There's case studies and lots of research in there to help people get a handle on what this wacky world is all about. My buzzer's going. I'm done. 20 minutes. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Nigel. Does anyone have any questions for Nigel based on his presentation? Am I going to challenge Annika through the room? Oh. I like that they're really close, actually.
So when you're implementing a workplace learning culture, have you come across challenges to that change? And if so, how have you overcome them?
I would say it depends. I teach at the University of Pennsylvania, Wharton Business School, and in Wharton, the standard answer to any question is, it depends. It depends. You can go a long way. These are top professors. It depends, because if it comes through from the top, when Satya said we're going to be more humble, we're going to learn more, we're going to be more curious, I don't think anyone in their right mind would have said, curiosity, I'm going to stamp that out in my department. You won't get that opposition. But when you try to engage the organization, and it's not necessarily endorsed at the top, you will get people saying, this is a waste of time, no one is going to be doing their job properly, we're going to lose productivity, this is totally ridiculous. And there is challenge. And you defend the challenge by showing what is happening in the organization. Not people learn more, it's fantastic, isn't it? No one cares. What you say is, Look at this uptick. Look at these cross sales. Look at the way this group worked with that group to get that contract that they never have got previously. They're the examples. And gradually, you go from a few people to a few more, and then eventually the CEO says, I get this. I think we should definitely go for it. Then all your problems go away. But yes, you get a lot of opposition. Because it seems kind of soft and limp and pathetic, you know, in some organizations that are hardwired to metrics and driven people. But often, give people space, they're actually more productive. If you bottle them up, put pressure on them, productivity actually goes down. Documented, true. That is not me making it up because it suits me. It's absolutely true. So this is about being more productive, being more successful. You focus on the business, not about having more learning. That's a byproduct, in a sense, and the driver.
Fantastic, thank you. Any more questions for Nigel's presentation? Get my breath out. No, okay. I'm going to welcome Helena and Nigel back onto the stage, into our comfy seats section, to talk about some questions around 21st century learning and the types of challenges that they have. So they're not just talking about their jobs. They're talking about their opinions based on the industry that we're in and the century that we're in. And this is also a free-for-all that you can actually, of course, ask questions, and I will lose my phone and then jump off the stage and come chase after you for some extra questions. So the first question, which is one that Nigel actually put forward himself very bravely, what is the difference between 20th century learning and 21st century learning? Nigel, it was your question.
I think everyone should ponder that, what's changed. And I would say myself that even though I was running L&D and the BBC in the 21st century, I had a 20th century mindset. I focused on doing the best we could in terms of learning, of increasing the quantum and the velocity, so from being stodgy and slow to being agile and fast, but all focused on learning products, getting the data in to prove what was happening. But in terms of engagement with the business, understanding profoundly what an organization going through massive change needed, that took me a long while to get that message. And I suppose the best example of that was, being invited to executive team away days to present on leadership or onboarding. And that kind of uneasy relationship that I can still viscerally feel now, that you're not going in as right in there with the team, understanding. It was like people would talk about the BBC, and then they'd realize I was in the room and say, oh, so Nigel, how's the learning going? As if make the guy feel a little bit less uncomfortable than he really is. And I kind of squirmed in all of that because I just wasn't seen, even though I desperately wanted to be part of the bigger team and the bigger picture. That was my fault because I didn't explore. It took me a long time to explore and understand. And when I started doing that, the biggest fight back was not from the rest of the business. It was from my own people who said, don't get out there, don't tell them what we're doing, just keep it quiet, this is really good, we've done this for 10 years, shut up, don't cause trouble. So that to me is the difference. It's being part of that top team where people respect your views as a framer of challenge and a framer of how we get to where we want to get to as an organization, not the learning guy who can talk boringly about how many learning courses we've got, because no one cares. And I realized that when they asked me those questions, the look in their eyes was, we don't care.
Helena, do you have anything else to add?
I think the difference for me between 20th century and 21st century is we want everything a lot more immediate, and we need things to be a lot more focused, a lot more just in time. We haven't got the time to search, you want to be able to delve deeper if you want to, but you want to get what you want when you want to get it, and it's an expectation now. It's an expectation that you can learn where you want, when you want, what you want. But what I think gets forgotten is that you still need the support around that learning. You still need the framework. And so it's about how you build the framework and the flexibility all in one. And I think that's increasing an expectation in the 21st century.
Okay, so with both those answers in mind, how do you feel that we will be building learning environments in the future?
I think there's complex unpacking in that question. On the one hand, there's a sort of technology issue, and if anyone's seen the Fosway recent 9-grid report, which Josh Burson has taken great exception to, where they're basically saying that the difference between LMSs and LXPs, learning experience platforms, is a load of rubbish. They're so like each other now, they're kind of copying each other. Why don't we just call them learning suites? I big, all-encompassing programs, and then that allows us to define other operations. For example, filtered, that's a specialist learning application that can plug in to the suites. And I think that's, for me, that's a helpful way of looking at it. But basically, that increasingly, we're being told what we get. So we don't get a free choice. The company says, Workday's great, we love Workday, you're going to get it. Workday's learning management modules are rubbish. We don't care, we're getting Workday, suck it up. So therefore, there's a role in turning Workday into something that works and building an environment that actually delivers what you want it to deliver, rather than falling over and going, oh, well, Workday's crap, that's just fine, we'll just live with that. Or screaming and shouting and saying, we don't want Workday, we want Degreed. And that doesn't get you any further. So there is a sort of technology issue. The other thing is exactly what Helena was doing. There's a whole issue about what is a learning environment. And a learning environment is one where reflection is respected, where there is time off the job to improve, where there's sharing and improving and informal learning all over the place, and where people feel that they've got the time to do the best they can rather than to only do the absolute minimum that will get them through from 9 to 5. And I think that's a more profound issue. But those two things work together, and I think we've got both of those challenges running in parallel. You can't shirk the technology stuff, but neither should you shirk the other stuff as well. The lights are going off.
I know, it's almost like we should have some Oscars
That's telling
music
us something.
playing.
Shows the lack of activity. We're all dying in the room.
Helena, before we all die in the room, do you have anything else to add to
Yeah, so in
Nigel's
terms of creating content, I think there's everything that you've touched on, and it's also about increasingly people want things faster. So I come from a content development background, and I'm always being asked to create the content quicker. And there's only so much you can create quicker without it losing the quality. So it's about what do we do to do that. And some of it is we need to start curating what already exists. And it touches on the talk this morning that I was at, which is that increasingly we need to curate, not create, because there are so many experts that have already done it. So going back to TES and the TES resources that we've got thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of resources by teachers that are extremely helpful that you can't find. But if you could find them and if you knew they were there, you'd have what you needed in an instant. So we have now a team curating those contents, those resources into packages, which become extremely helpful for the end user. And that's what I think content development is turning into. It's about using what you've got, using the experts you've got to make sure that it's accessible and people are not drowning in too much or spending too long reinventing the wheel constantly. And that's a big challenge and something tough to really do well. But when it's done well, it's extremely powerful.
And content curated needs context. And there was that report I read somewhere, I think it was in the New York Times, saying that 70% of articles that are flicked around an organisation, the person who flicks them around has never read them. So they just get something in and they go, oh, that's interesting. God, I'll send it to Helena. Helena, this is cool. You should read it. And then Helena goes, oh, I haven't got time. So she sent it to 3 stars and said, hey, you should look at this. This is really good stuff. And it goes all around the organisation. Absolutely no one ever opens it. That's not curation. That's just, I don't know what it is, but it's not curation. You have to have a context. You have to have someone saying, I want you to read this, Helena, because there are these 3 really big issues that we should probably take on board. Not just read it because I want to get it off my desktop as quick as possible and I can't bear to put it in the bin. So I think there's some big issues of getting a
And so,
genuine curation.
so what we're talking about is context again. So making the learning meaningful,
Yes.
making sure that the context is clear, making sure that the learning you're creating or curating has purpose, and the purpose is clear. So the person coming to it says, yep, this is what I need, and can take it away. Not that they have to research and borrow and suddenly find something useful. It needs to be really to the point. And that's actually not easy to do, which I'm sure a lot of you in here know. It takes, because you want to put everything in. You know, you've got all these ideas and you want to put them all in because you want to share everything, but that's going to turn people off. So it's about really getting to that essence, and that's what I spend my life doing. So I call clipping the wings of my team, and they're forever trying to do too much. And that's whether that's too much content or too much animation or too many frills and whistles that detract from the learning. So it's about doing the right amount that really helps that learning and that learning experience, which takes a lot of planning and a lot of discussions.
That stems beautifully onto my final question, which is, in the world that we're now in, where there's a hell of a lot of content and there's a hell of a lot of opportunities, how do we help staff and learners sustain engagement?
Because it's not just about learning opportunities, it's about my future, being employed in the next 5 years, growing, developing, having a career. And once people believe they're learners, they quite enjoy it, even if it's challenging. If you believe you're not a learner, then it's torture, absolute torture. So you create and celebrate learning. It's like in Microsoft now, people really share the joy of being curious and finding stuff out, and they have great pleasure in passing that around the organization. Previously, that was a firing offense. You know, if you wasted your time finding out about something you didn't need to know, you were really in trouble, because that was not delivering the numbers. So it's building that environment where, I use these words, and I know people roll their eyes sometimes, but where there is a joy in coming to work, and where there's nothing more interesting than making what we do better every day. And you get real pleasure out of that. You know, WD-40 sells a liquid in a can that you go, shh, and yet what do they say? If you say to someone, what do you do? They don't say, oh, we manufacture cans of stuff. They say, we ease people's lives. We make people's lives easier. And they've got this big website of instances where people were going to the church to be married, and they got in the car and the engine wouldn't start and they didn't know what to do, and they're frantic, they're going to miss the wedding, and the best man said, no, have you got any WD-40? Squirted in the ignition, the car starts first time, they get there on time, and they send a little note into WD-40 saying, you saved my marriage, you saved my life. So they put it on the website. There's 1,000 stories about easing people's lives. That's what you sign up to. And you can feel the enthusiasm in that. If you just said, oh, you know, we've got to sell more cans and more stuff in cans, it's not exactly inspiring, is it? So you've got to inspire people.
Helena, anything else to add?
I don't think I can follow that, but yeah, it's about
Stuff in cans. Yeah.
it's about cans. No, it's about inspiration. Again, it's about context. It's about reward. And when I say reward, I don't necessarily mean financial reward. It's about feeling that what you do is valuable, that you are valued, and that everything that you bring, including additional learning, is valuable. And I think that needs to come directly from your peers and your manager, let alone the whole company. But it needs to start there, in that little hub. And I know that in my team, we have regular learning and development sessions where people bring something that they've learnt that week to the table and share it with everybody. It's small, but it makes, because the job can be quite unglamorous, so it makes it a little bit more meaningful. It makes doing that extra minute or two, that extra mile, it makes it a little bit more rewarding. And they feel the value when the rest of their peers are like, oh, that's great. That's going to save me loads of time. And it's not about going on a massive training session. It's about what they need to improve what they're doing and how they share that amongst them, each other, and then how we start to span out to the wider organisation. So it's about reward and context.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you, guys. Are there any questions in the room? Any burning questions for Nigel or Helena? Or is it Bicky break? That's the big question. Bicky break. I'd like to thank Nigel and Helena today for all their presentations and insights. You can catch up with them afterwards. I'm sure they'll trade more insights with Bickies. And they're available online and on Twitter. Thank you very much, guys.
And thank you all for coming.
Thank you
so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you.